All right, so let's start with August 2022. So here, the first question is trying to test your understanding on branch profit taxes, right? So a quick recap of what that is. Now, branch profit taxes or branch profit tax, as the name implies, will be paid by branches. So let's take note. Branch profit tax is paid by who? A branch, right? So branches are liable to pay branch profit tax. What is the principle? What do you need to remember here when it comes to branch profit tax? Basically, here, what the law is saying is that for a branch, or technically speaking, when we say a permanent establishment, right, there's a requirement that their earned repatriated profits are subject to tax at the rate of 8%. This is a final tax, right? But on what tax base do you apply this 8% rate? The law says it should be applied on the net profit after tax figure, right? For those who want reference, you can find this basically in section 60 of the Income Tax Act, that is Act 896, as well as Regulation 21 of the Income Tax Regulations, that is LI 2244, right? So you'd find further information on this. But basically, for the purpose of running through this question, what we need to remember is that there's a branch profit tax at 8%. It's a final tax. It's applied on the net profit after tax, not before tax, after tax. Net profit after tax. So in a question, all you need to do is, regardless of whatever the examiner says, once you see what the question says and it tells you there's something having to do with a branch, let your mind come to this principle, right? So let's go to the question. Here, it says what? Required, compute the branch profit tax for the 2020 year of assessment. So you know it has to do with branch profit tax. I just mentioned the rate is what? 8%, right? So we know that. And it has to be on which figure? Net profit after tax, not before tax, right? Okay. So let's come back to the question. Chahanka Ghana branch declares a profit before tax. They gave us before tax, right? Of 6 million cedis in the 2020 year of assessment. After, take notes, not before, after charging depreciation of 680,000 and the loss of 1.5, which was incurred in 2012. Capital allowance was 750,000 and corporate tax rate is 25%. Compute branch profit tax. So here, we need to find the correct net profit after tax and then apply 8% on it. That's it. It's a very simple question for 6 marks, right? So if you don't know the principle here, that branch profit tax has to be at 8% on the net profit after tax of that branch, or technically speaking, of that permanent establishment, you get this question wrong, right? And before we start the question, in terms of compliance requirements, this tax must be paid within 30 days after the end of the basis period of the branch, right? So if the examiner asks you for any compliance requirements, the branch profit tax must be paid within 30 days, right? Within 30 days after the end of the basis period of the branch, right? This is very, very important. So let's come back to the question. So here, what the examiner has done is to give us a number of things, right? So let's look at what he's given us and work this out to get the right answer. So remember that here, what are we given? And one more trick, when it comes to exams, before I forget, always the examiner mentions in their reports, the examiner's report, that students do not write who the question relates to. Remember, a tax, or the concept of tax, has to do with a taxable person or a tax unit. There is a person and there's a subject matter, there's a tax type, and there's a year of assessment. So for every question, this is how you should go about it. So here, always write the person's name. So they said is what? Cha Han Cha Ghana branch. Always do this, right? Underline it neatly. Then the next question is, what are you computing? It's what? Branch profit tax. So you write computation of branch profit tax. Don't end there. For which year of assessment? The question said what? If you look here, for the 2020 year of assessment. So we write for the 2020 year of assessment. It will surprise you that the examiner can give you a mark for just writing this. Right? So please don't just start and zoom straight into the question. For every tax question that has to do with computation, write the name of the person. Is it Mr. Osei? Is it Kofi and Amma Partnership? Is it ABC Company Limited? And in this case, it's Chahancha Ghana Branch. Right? Write the name of the person. The next line, write what you are computing. Is it computation of withholding tax, computation of branch profit tax, computation of employment income tax, computation of partnership income, whatever it is you're writing or you're computing, write it and add the year of assessment. You can get a mark for this, right? So remember I said we are trying to arrive at the net profit after tax figure. So we're just going to use what we're given in the question to get this figure. So they said they declared, and if you look here, let me clean all of this. They declared a profit before tax of 6 million, right? So we have profit before tax of 6 million. We can put Ghana Cedi sign here so they know all figures are in Ghana Cedi, right? But they are saying this figure was arrived at after charging depreciation of 680. General principle in taxes, we always disallow depreciation and we grant capital allowance. General principle in tax, right? If you read section 130 of the Income Tax Act, that's Act 896, it deals with domestic and excluded expenditure, right? The Act clearly mentions the fact that some expenditure can be deemed to be what? Excluded. In this case, depreciation is clearly listed as what? An excluded expenditure. So we need to add back depreciation and instead of that, what? Grant capital allowance. So we need to add back. Because remember they said this 6 million figure was arrived at after what? Charging depreciation. And the tax law does not agree with depreciation, so you need to what? Strip it out by adding it back to profit. What's the figure? They said it's what? 680,000. So we add back 680,000, right? So you have to add back depreciation. Then the next thing is they also charged a loss of 1.5 million, right? But that is not an issue. Where the issue is, where or in which year was a loss incurred? 2012, right? 2012. The principle in tax generally is that for losses, right, losses can be carried forward by into the next 5 years by those in the priority sectors. For all other businesses, they can carry forward their losses for a period of 3 years, right? So those in the priority sectors, we have the mining and mineral operation, petroleum operations, energy and power business, manufacturing businesses, farming business, agro-process guys, tourism business guys, and then the ICT businesses. All of those are priority sectors. They can carry forward their losses for 5 years, right? General businesses can carry forward their losses for 3 years, right? But just to provide an update, this is based on the law as such today. I'm recording this on the 9th of February, right? The law is yet to change. There's a bill in Parliament that seeks to unify all the carry forward provisions such that all businesses will now carry forward their losses for a period of 5 years. But that law is yet to be passed by Parliament. So this is based on the law as of today. Should the law change, everyone can carry forward their losses for 5 years, right? But for now, the point I'm making here is not even about that, right? They have incurred a loss in 2012, which they charged. Which year are we computing? 2020. That's literally 8 years later. Nobody has the right to carry forward losses for 8 years. Remember, I said the maximum you can carry forward your losses for is a period of what? 5. That's if you're in the priority sectors, right? So what we can see clearly here is that they've charged a loss that should have expired by now. So we need to also add that back, right? So we add back the loss charged. How much was that? The question said it was 1.5 million, right? So we now need to add these together. So it's going to be 6 million. So my calculator is 6 million plus 600 plus 680,000 plus 1.5. That gives me 81. 80000, right? So this gives me 8.18 million. Then remember they said they had been granted capital allowance. I mentioned earlier that we disallow depreciation and grant capital allowance instead, right? So capital allowance, 750,000. So you're not required to compute here. It's been given to you for free. So you just less capital allowance. What's the figure? 750,000. So we just need to deduct. So minus 750,000. This gives me 743,000. So this is my adjusted net profit after taking out the things that the law doesn't require and adding the things that have to be added back, right? So I'll call this my adjusted net profit. Now, we have our adjusted net profits now. The question said the corporate tax rate is 25%. So we can say tax at 25%. So we apply 25% on this figure here, right? So this times 0.25, this gives me 1,857,500. But remember that the question says branch profit tax is charged 8% on what? Net profit after tax. So we need to deduct the tax figure, right? So I'll deduct tax from this. So I have 743,000 minus 1,857,500. This gives me 5,572,500. Right? So this is my net profit after tax. What does the law say? You charge branch profit tax at 8% on this. So we say branch profit tax at what? 8% will give me what? My BPT becomes 8% on 5,572,500. And according to my calculator times 0.08, it gives me 445,800. Obviously, put your Ghana cedi sign here, right? 445,800. So, if you can do this, you're scoring an easy 6 marks here, right? You're scoring an easy 6 marks if you can do something like this. So remember the principle. Always know in every question what the tax base is. What are you required to apply the rate on? In this question, it was net profit after tax. So your job is to do everything possible to arrive at that figure, and then you slap your rate.